Today we'll be looking at properties of numbers. There are many different properties that apply to numbers. We'll be looking at the commutative property, reflexive property, symmetric property, transitive property, substitution property, as well as identity properties and properties of zero when it comes to addition and multiplication. We're going to evaluate this expression using properties for each step. Whenever we solve either a multiplication, addition, subtraction, or division problem, we can consider this using the substitution property. Normally we don't write out zero or adding zero, but since we are writing the steps for each time that I'm solving this, then this would be considered using the additive inverse property. Again, we're solving 2 times 3, so that would be considered substitution. Finally, anything added by 0 is considered using the additive identity property. The next problem I'll read to you is a word problem where you're going to be finding the total cost. Raphael is buying furnishings for his first apartment. He buys a couch for $300, lamps for $30.50, a rug for $25.50, and a table for $50. We are to find the total cost. This relates to the word problem question with Raphael. So the first thing we need to figure out is the total cost. So we need to write down everything that he bought. $300 for the couch, plus lamps for $30.50, plus a rug for $25.50, plus a table for $50. Now, to find the total cost, we need to add this together. What we're thinking about, though, is how we can use properties to do this mentally. So, to think about setting this up using a property and to do it in my head, I would think I would be looking for compatible numbers, okay? So, to me, I want to combine these decimal answers first so that I'm left with all whole numbers. So if I wanted to do those two first, I'd group them together, and I'd be using the associative property. The associative property groups things together, and whatever you've grouped together, you do first. So we've grouped that together. We've used this associative property, and we're going to add $30.50 plus $25.50 first. So I'll rewrite what I haven't done yet. So 300 plus $30.50 plus $25.50 is going to give you $56 plus 50. Now again, I might want to do something first in my head that might be easier than just going from left to right here. So I might want to switch the two numbers around. So that is using the commutative property. So far we've used the associative property by grouping what I wanted to do first in parentheses. Now I use the commutative property, which means to switch the order of numbers in order to do them first, or to work with them first. So 300 could stay there, but let's say I want to do 300 plus 50 first, and then add 56. I just switch the order, which won't change my answer, and that's using the commutative property. Whoops, spelled that wrong. commutative property. So now I can get my final answer by adding 300 plus 50 first, 350, and then add 56, and that will give me a total of 406. But notice how I wanted to do this all in my head, so I thought about the easiest way to do that, and that would be to use both the associative and the commutative property. Now we're going to think about that same idea and evaluate these expressions by naming the property as I use it each step. Okay? So the first one, 2 times 9 times 4 times 10. I'm thinking about how I can use a property to make this done easily in my head. So mental math here. What would be the best thing to do first if I wanted to multiply all this in my head? Well, I'd look for compatible numbers, or numbers that are easily multiplied in my head, which might be 4 times 10. Okay, if I wanted to do those first, I'd group them, and that would be using the associative property. So I'd do 4 times 10 first. I still have 2 times 9. And 4 times 10 would give me 40. So since I did 4 times 10, I use the substitution property because I'm substituting 40 now in for what 4 times 10 used to be. And then I would continue. I probably want to just multiply from left to right, but maybe if I try again and put the 9 first instead of the 2, it might be easier to do in my head. So that is using the commutative property. So I'm going to switch the 2 with the 9. I'm running out of room here. And multiply that first. That would be the commutative property. And since I probably also want to do 2 times 40 before I do 2 times 9, because that would be easier to do in my head, I group that together using brackets, and that would be using the associative property. Then I could finally do the rest in my head. So 2 times 40 would be 80, and then 80 times 9 would be 720. And that, I use the substitution property both times whenever I solve to get a number answer. Now we'll try the second example on this page. Now we're going to do this example. 5/3 times 25 times 3 times 2. And again, you want to think what would be the easiest way to do this in my head, and then what properties would help me to do that better. So I probably don't want to do a fraction times a large whole number unless they're compatible. So maybe I wanted to start by doing 5/3 times 3, since they both have 3's in them. So if I wanted to switch the order, I would need to do 5/3 times 3 times 25 times 2. And if I switch the order, that means I use the commutative property. So I would list that. And then I would do 5/3 times 3. Five-thirds times 3, you would make 3 as a fraction, simplify, cross simplify by crossing out the 3's, because 3 goes into 3 3 times. I'm sorry, 3 goes into 3 one time, so they both can cancel each other out. You're left with 5. Now, you probably could have done that in your head. That's why I wanted to start with that. So 5 times 25 times 2 is what you're left with. And again, look for compatible numbers. So I might want to do 25 times 2 first. So I'm going to group those together so that I'm able to do that first. And whenever I group the numbers together, it's called using the associative property. So I'm going to do 25 times 2 first, which is 50, and 50 times 5 I should be able to do easily in my head. And whenever you do the math and there's no other property, this is considered using substitution. So 5 times 50, I use substitution to get 250. And that would be my final answer.